All right. Hey, welcome back to New South Christians. I'm your host, David Fuqua. Man, it has turned cold outside, so it feels good to be in here. And to be honest with you, we had a different guest planned for right now, but as it always happens, you just pray, walk across campus, and somebody interesting is going to cross your path. And this gentleman sitting to my left is a very fascinating human being. I'm looking forward to hearing a lot of what he has to say. He's actually in my class. Now, we know him as Dr. Who. And I don't know, he can explain that if he wants to, but it seems to fit. And then also, just sitting here talking to him, he's fantastic. So I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself, then we'll go ahead and get started. So.
I'm EJ Scott. I'm in his macroeconomics class.
Absolutely.
I got the nickname Dr. Who because one day I got bored in the morning and I came in wearing this giant trench coat. I had this old blazer on. I don't even remember what pants I was wearing. It was one day, man. It was a day.
Yeah.
And that was the day where I kind of made myself known. I was like, hey, I'm stepping out now. I'm getting active in class, and this is how I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Everyone was staring at me when I was walking in. I thought it was funny, and I thought it was great. I had a
Oh,
great
it's
time.
hilarious. I tell you, the great thing about having him in class, though, is when other people won't say anything. I mean, it's like he's the go-to person. So you go, hey, Dr. Who, what do you got for us? And I mean, right, wrong, and different. It's always fascinating, interesting. And I think the other students really appreciate it because it takes the pressure off of them. And if anything, it's accelerated the class. And then one other plug for him on Halloween.
Oh,
Go ahead and explain that outfit. I mean,
Yeah,
that was probably the best on campus. So.
Yeah, the hot costume. So my old middle school from Sumner Academy, which is down the street, my mother teaches there, and they'll have me come in. They'll let me pose as the mascot. And on Halloween, I'm like, hey, think I could take this and wear it as a costume to the college down the street? It's not a big deal. I'll bring it back, I promise. They go for it. I did it last year. Last year was so much more exciting. I had a I know that sounds terrible, right?
No, I don't feel bad about it. I got the benefit this year. I'm good.
But I just did a speech from my communications class on that event last year. I got 100. And no mean to flex or anything.
Right.
And then I did it again this year, and I'm happy it's becoming a tradition. It's so much fun. So I'll wear it to class. It gets really, really hot.
Oh, no doubt about that.
I was graced from it, though, this time because I ran a 5K in it.
Really?
A week before I came out. So you know those sauna suits people wear to lose weight? My shirt was so soaked from that. I had to change shirts before getting in the car because when I'd sit in the seat, it would just
stick to it.
Just stick to it. It's disgusting. Sorry.
All right, we can move on from that.
Let's move on. But it was so much fun.
Let's just put it, we appreciate the sacrifice. That's the key. All right, so I told him a little bit because, like I said, we just snagged him outside the Caudell building. In fact, I think I left a history professor ticked off. I was trying to snag somebody out of our class. I can't lie. But anyway, it worked out better with him anyway. So one of the things, this is obviously called New South Christians, but you don't have to be a Christian. In fact, it's just about, for anybody who hasn't watched this yet, it's about Gen Z. It's about how just religion, God, just our whole country's view of the spiritual landscape has totally changed. And this traditional old Southern Bible Belt has given way to all kinds of different things. So we just have different people on, mainly stick with Gen Z because that's what our campus is, and just try to ask interesting, provocative questions just to give you an insight into what the typical student around here or person is thinking about spiritually. So just kind of introduce your spiritual background or whatever, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah, I got to say, typical bringing me in, but I understand what you're saying. For me personally, my dad grew up here. My entire father's side going all the way up have been in kind of the South since the 1700s.
Okay.
So religiously very Christian all the way through.
Very conservative?
Very conservative Christian, good. Very, stereotypical, picket fence, all the good stuff, right?
All right.
And my mother, her family is very Orthodox Christian, especially my grandparents on my Romanian side, very, very passionate. Herself has kind of drifted away from it. She's kind of in between, trying to hold the faith for my father and for her family, but still kind of hosting her own ideas. Me personally, I would like to say at this point, I'm an open agnostic. I turned 18 maybe a few months ago, so I'm still developing myself as an adult to understand the ideas. I'm very immature as a child, which, as it goes, right? You need to be self-aware.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to take that into account as I develop these ideas about myself and where I am. But what about you, actually?
Well, hang on before I get there. I just want to make sure I cover this. So how would you define an agnostic? Because we'll have people watch it and say, I think I know what that is,
Yep.
but I'm not sure.
Me personally, I would define it, and this may not be the dictionary definition, somebody who believes in a spiritual, a higher being, but they think either one, that being has no interaction with their life, or two, that being has interaction but is not of a desire to be worshipped or anything like that.
Interesting.
It's much more of a hands-off kind of approach.
Well, then let me do this. One of the things I was talking to EJ about before we started was the idea that on the statistics I had looked at, like 40% of your generation identifies as this.
Agnostic,
They call them
yep.
nuns, N-O-N-E-S. Basically, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. There could be a supreme being. It doesn't necessarily have to be God. It could be something else. So in that kind of environment, that's the majority.
Yep.
And so, and I think for a lot of people, when they watch, these podcasts, it'd be like, wow, what happened? How did we go from this concern? Yeah. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that before? And I'll answer your question. I'm not trying to deflect it, but I need to know about you first. That's the most important thing.
Yep.
But anyway, go ahead.
So my thoughts on as to why I think is the natural rebellion of things. Like going back all the way in history, we see the 70s, we've got the rebellion against the conservative kind of, especially you can see this in music, right? You'll see the rock of the 70s and 80s combating the kind of more mellow type music from beforehand, the students or I guess children combating their adults. You'll see that in the 90s and early 2000s with rap, combating the hard rock of the Gen X and older millennials. I think that kind of similar trend is happening now with the combativeness of I see what you believe and I'm trying to be different, trying to emphasize myself. I also think that I think we can both agree with the influx of pronouns and gender and all of that into modern society. It really doesn't have a place in any religion because when you look at religion, gender is very defined as one, being interlinked with your sex, and two, being connected to the fact that, well, you can't change it. You have what you have. And I think a lot of Gen Z kind of disagree with that. They go, I can be what I want to be now, whether or not your old book tells me or not. But I think if you completely divide yourself from a supreme being, saying they're not atheist, they're agnostic, an atheist being you don't believe in any at all, is, well, then what do you really have in life? If not nothing. And I'm not completely against the idea that, sure, we live for a higher purpose, because if you devolve yourself only to the chemicals that compose you, we're no better than dogs or cows or anything like that. Whereas when you've got that higher being to kind of guide you, you can go, I believe in it. I don't know too much about it. It's not my purpose to understand it, but it's there. And
so do you attend any kind of church or worship or is this because I mean it fits, obviously I go out on my own to whatever I want to define it as. So.
Yeah. I will go with my father to Baptist church to help support him, and really eases his conscience when I'm there with him as well. But me personally, no, I don't attend anything, mostly because I'm still in that state of I don't really know what I'm going through with regards to spirituality. And I think that's where a lot of Gen Z, and I'm not speaking for everybody particularly, but where a lot of Gen Z may find themselves being, hey, I don't really understand my spirituality, so I'm going with agnostic until I can maybe progress more towards it. Whereas people your age, millennial, Gen X, and boomer have really flushed out their ideas of society, their ideas of religion and spirituality, which has allowed them to really set up in this idea of religion, organized religion. And I think the agnosticism will either kind of tip towards atheism of okay, I've kind of agreed, science is king, right? Or tip into religion.
Right.
Whether something more like, have you heard of the Baha'i religion?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Very
There
interesting.
used to be, when I taught at Hendersonville High School, there was a group of Baha'i.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, it's kind of a funny thing. They adopted a section of the highway down there at the bottom of the loop.
Yeah.
When you come out of the lower part of Hendersonville on the way to Rivergate. And I remember giving them a hard time one time in class because their part of the road had tons of litter on it. I said, the Baha'i have got to get out. If you did a public proclamation, you were going to do it, you have to take care of it. Of course, they all cracked up. So
anyway,
so they're always free game. So
yeah.
Well, before I get to me, I got to tell you, I don't want to lose what's in my brain or whatever. So
go for it.
I think it's real interesting because when I did a lot of statistics when I first started doing the podcast, I found the thing about the nuns, 8 or 9% of Gen Z that go to church don't trust the pastor. Many of them just, I don't know, their views just really shocked me. I guess I didn't know. I never asked, you know, and I noticed some churches are huge, that many seem to be dying out, the small, the real conservative, you know, young people like you. Like I said, you go with your dad, but then obviously when your dad passes away, depending on how your religion evolves,
it
wherever he goes,
you.
yeah, it's going to, you know, severely die out. So I don't know. So where are we going? I mean, if the Bible Belt's under this type of assault now,
wow,
I'm thinking of you and the evolution of your mind and going, well, where are we headed?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, because I think you've articulated very well why your generation is open to these other things. And I think you've articulated it very well that it's a part of a journey that you're on.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're already 40% and climbing, I mean, for an older person like me that's maybe traditionalist, is my future looking bleak?
I think as first of all, to go to your future looking bleak, right? I think the ideas of, you know, allowing everyone to have their own kind of thoughts and beliefs in America defends the religious institutions that we have. Like, to go back to things like what was that science religion called where they worship an alien?
I can't remember the name, but I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about? Oh my goodness, I don't know why I can't remember it. Tom Cruise is a part of it, right?
Oh yeah. There was a whole movie I watched on that's very strange, very weird.
Oh man,
it's going to pop in my head while you're talking, so I'll work on it. Go ahead.
That's recognized as a religious institution in America, which is wild because I heard about, I'm not sure if this is true, but in Germany, they'll have posters up in front of their organization meeting spots, and it'll be careful, this is where they meet up, this is a cult. They will try and pull you in, and they'll have the signs just posted right out there.
Really?
Since it's, you know, public property, you know, country property.
Yeah, I understand.
They can't do anything about it. I thought that was so shocking to me because on top of that, they don't pay any taxes on it because of the fact that
it's identified as a religious institution.
And I think if that's a religious institution, I don't think any other one in America has anything to fear.
Yeah, but that Tom Cruise, what is it? Tom Cruise and then John Travolta. There's a whole large group that belongs to that very, you know, wealthy, prominent people in the entertainment industry and everything. But ooh, man. It's trying to digest that other planet and the other existence and everything.
Harnessing your own internal powers and energies.
Oh yeah,
to manipulate.
Absolutely.
It's so much. But to actually target your question of where are we going, I don't know. There's so much, and I think you can look at the election for this. I looked at statistics for the biggest problems that people looked at when considering their vote. Number one was economy. I can't remember number two, but abortion was in the top three. You've got all these really
because of the women's rights issue, et cetera.
With Roe v. Wade
with it being overturned, and then states being allowed to individualize the vote in their state to either protect women's rights or roll them back or whatever.
Which is wild that you look at that now. Where's religion in this top 10? And all of a sudden, you know, look at all the speeches that have been given. How many of them have been about religious identity, religious advancement, religious understanding, things like that, which I understand why you're not going to that. There's no money there. America runs on money.
Right.
But it makes you wonder, we aren't focusing on this. We don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's just me personally. If I had to make a guess, I'd say the beliefs would probably skew more on the agnostic atheist side, purely because of the idea that people have this notion that science and religion are somehow opposites, and that they combat each other at every turn. I really like the religious pastors who kind of work with scientific advancements to go, you know, this doesn't counter anything the Bible says, right? I don't think that there's been any big advancement that actually counters the Bible directly in terms of we discovered this, therefore Bible is wrong. Don't think that's happened. And I think that the people who try and fight those scientific advancements as religious individuals are playing the wrong game, because then you're alienating all these people who are very passionate about science, and science being so grounded in our society today, right? Like, look at everything around us. It's all science, right? It's helping ground Gen Z because Gen Z understands it the best. I would argue.
Oh yeah, because I think you were born into that age.
We understand it.
People like me, we came along a long time after that and still trying to play catch up. Part of us had revolted against it, part of it I've kept, but you were baptized in it, for lack of a better way of looking at it.
Oh yeah. 100%.
So where do you think? I mean, I look at ethics, morals. In this new age you're describing. How do we navigate all those? So what is ethical? What is moral? Or are we all just going to have our own compass now? And so instead of being grouped together, because like you said, we've identified different groups all through the ages.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, where's America going now?
To go with the ethical, moral kind of compass aspect, I think now a lot of people have identified that as literally the word of the law, right? Don't murder, don't kill, don't, things like that. Whereas if we look at things that are kind of in the gray area of that, specifically drugs, I think is an excellent part of this, right? As a conservative Christian, you probably view drugs in an extremely...
as a bad thing,
As a bad thing, extremely negative light. And then I think that a lot of Gen Z is kind of, because they don't have those religious kind of, not burdens, but straps to them, I guess, they don't really view drugs in that negative light. They're viewing it as the law views them, which is their only idea for moral compass. And that law says it's in the gray area, right? It's up, especially if it's up to the states, it's in the gray area, which is why, in California, you've got the decriminalization of weed, which has led a lot of people to kind of understand maybe it's not bad, right? And now their moral compass is now skewed by the people they put into law.
Sure.
So now you could argue that it's a circular kind of value within themselves, which to that point, yes, I think everybody does create their own moral compass, but I think the groundwork for it all comes from the word of the law, and that extended from religious texts, right?
All right, well, a couple of things I want to ask you about too, that we were just sitting here shooting the breeze about, was like aliens and the whole space thing. I mean, I can't let that go.
I love it.
So I mean,
where do we start?
What's the word on that? I mean,
so I'll target the arguments first.
Because do you believe? Well, let me ask you real quick. Do you believe in heaven?
As an afterlife?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't
obviously
think so.
I'm assuming hell.
No.
Okay. All right. So in that context, now we move on.
Now we move to aliens and things like that. I think so. Aliens are so exciting, and the people who say they aren't real because we haven't found evidence for them, I think really lack perspective. I saw this really interesting map, which was a map of the Milky Way galaxy, as well as a map of how much we'd explored. And the size we'd explored to the Milky Way galaxy was maybe this big across and tall. The part we'd explored was smaller than a penny. That we'd been able to analyze for visual life, not even scoop up dirt, take a sniff and go, nothing living in there.
Nothing here. Nothing here. No evidence.
No evidence.
Okay.
And I think it's naive to say, well, take a spoonful of salt water out of the ocean and go, there's no sharks in here, therefore there's no sharks in the ocean.
That's a really good analogy. I like that. That's pretty good.
And I'm like, put the spoon down, get in a boat, and go fishing. And then we'll see what you find. The problem is, we don't have a boat big enough, we don't have a boat fast enough, and we don't have a rod big enough. And I think that's the only thing holding us back.
So is the definition of what's there just faith? Or does it exist? Or
I think it exists. It's faith until you see it, right?
Okay.
Until you know for sure, then it is faith. And I have faith that it's out there because it's just, when you look at our evolution, even bacterial evolution, like maybe you identify aliens as intelligent life, maybe that doesn't exist, and that makes sense. I don't know if you've heard of the Fermi paradox or not.
Yes.
I find that so interesting because you've got all these different ideas of, well, if intelligent life is so great and we've done so well, where's the rest of it, right? Like, what are we doing here? Specifically, what is the universe doing here?
Wasting our time.
That's what I'm saying. So bacteria.
We're watching Jake Paul fight. What's his name?
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson. There you go. So instead of looking for the universe and everything, we're doing a pay-per-view of two people that are has-beens in my book.
That's
but
what
got paid a lot of money.
A lot
of lonely people that should have been looking to the cosmos.
I mean, I'm not going to judge what people do, but like I think we can do better, especially identifying ourselves as intelligent species. I find that ironic.
Right.
We are the only example of intelligent species identifying ourselves as intelligent species. It's like that meme about the brain identifying itself as the most important organ in the body. because the brain runs the body. So our brain has now said, oh, the brain's the most important. You need the brain. Anyways, atoms, studying atoms. To identify ourselves as intelligent species with having very little kind of distinguishment from other species. To get more serious note, what separates us from other animals? Is it our concepts of ability to do task-oriented learning, right? But crows can do that. Crows have been proven to be able to take, pick up sticks, pick up food out of bottles, and you can look up videos on these. It's so interesting. Then we do, what about our passion for emotion, right? Well, we've had a gorilla that they learned sign language, and the person who's teaching them signed, your teacher has died, and the gorilla signed for sadness. It's actually really interesting.
That is interesting.
So that doesn't separate us either. And you go, well, from there, what is it? Is it society? Well, look at ants. They have a society 1,000,000 times more efficient than ours, right? You look at cockroaches. They've survived so much more, so much longer, and they will continue to survive.
I love the statement that when the nuclear war comes at the end, rats and cockroaches will rule. Yeah.
Only one,
Well, let me ask you this then, before we run out of time. So I'm trying to think, okay, so I'm a baby boomer. Let's say I'm a local pastor and I'm looking at this declining pool of young Gen Z people for whatever reason that aren't coming into the church. How do I take what you've shared with us and maybe reach out to those people and corral some of them in?
Wow.
I mean, is that going to be hard to do? Or is that,
yeah, I think so. I think.
Oh, and one other quick sidebar. If I'm that conservative older guy, whose fault is it for the way you think? I mean, did we let you down somewhere? Did we let your parents down? I mean, there's going to be that soul searching of how did I lose this generation and how do I get them back? So those are two broad base. You can go wherever you need to go.
The two big points. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So to go off the first point, which was how to corral them in. I can't speak for everybody on this. Yeah. I need to make that clear before people go, oh, why'd you say that? I would not.
EJ's got the answer.
Oh, why is he our Messiah for this generation? I'm like, I'm just
the Messiah. I like that.
Taking what I know,
Okay.
I think that to corral that, a lot of heavy conservative pastors, especially primarily go word for word from the Bible, which is great. And I completely support that. Take what you have and emphasize, right? This is yours. This is your belief book. But when you've got people that are so intensely analyzing it, right? Where is that border from metaphor versus literal word of God? Which I'm actually curious, where do you stand on that for the Bible? Are you literal word of God on everything? Some are metaphors, some are analogies?
I got to be honest with you. Sometimes, to be frank with you, it's both, because I love the literal, because I mean, it takes me kind of off the hook for a lot of things. I just take this literal word, I read it, and then walk by faith. But then there are things, just the way it's written, the beauty of the language. I'm thinking the complexity of what we're trying to explain, given who I'm explaining it to. How could I not have those other things built in? And they're fine, because great metaphors. I mean, they're like from literature, from history. I mean, it's how we break down complex things and give me an ability to even be in the game of the discussion.
Oh, I completely understand.
And of course, I get jettisoned very quickly of somebody that's really bright and spent their whole time analyzing this. I've got translated Greek, translated this, and I'm okay. All right.
It's all you, man.
Okay, so that's one. What about the other?
So where we were,
where did we go wrong? Where did we go? Where did we lose you? Think about it. If you're 40%, it didn't happen overnight.
Oh no!
And you got to blame somebody. This is America. It's somebody's fault, right?
Wow.
I mean, it's TV. It was TikTok. It was
who to blame?
Drugs. It was music. It was all the things we blame. All the sins are somebody's fault.
I think society has changed so powerfully. I don't think we've experienced as big of a change in all of human history, except within the past century, with the development of, I think that's my alarm for our class, actually.
Oh, is it?
Oh, no, that's my alarm to do work.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm not worried. I'm not worried.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to start when I get there, so it's all good. Go ahead.
So it's this rapid change, the development of the iPhone, the development of the internet, right? I have more power in my pocket than NASA scientists did landing on the moon. Why am I not on the moon yet? But
good point.
Yeah, exactly. But I think this flood is like hitting a teacup with a fire hose, right?
Wow.
You're going to fill it up, and then it's going to go flying. And who knows if it's shattering on the wall? Who knows if it's bouncing around? Who knows if it'll even have water in it when it's all said and done. And to go off that, I think to blame is just the circumstances in general, something that I don't think you could have controlled.
Right.
I don't think if you put every single boomer together, right, and told them, hey, this is what's going to happen, you all need to stop it. There's still millions of you. How would you all control every single little movement to stop that?
Right.
And then it's like the internet inevitable, the phones inevitable, video games less so, but still influential, inevitable. All of these such influential things are going to come. And I don't think that anything that could have been done would have been able to manipulate that in a way that's advantageous.
So there was no stopping. It was
There was no stopping. Yeah.
So is there any way to guide it using your water example? I mean, you were talking about blasting a teacup. It just got out. It's just going to land where it lands.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of, like I said, once again, the older generation say, okay, they're outside the teacup.
Yeah.
How do I pull them back in?
How to pull them back in?
To some level, because if you're a traditional Christian, I mean, what's the great commandment? To go forth,
you
know, try to spread the word, save you from eternal damnation, you know, judgment and all that.
How to progress that. I think that's where we go back into the literal word versus the metaphor. When you have the literal word, we go back to the idea of Gen Z being very experience yourself, your moral compass being very lenient, very open, what's wrong versus right. And I think so long as you're taking the literal word, which I think a lot of the conservative, especially Baptists, are doing now, and don't even get me started on Catholics in terms of literal word, you're alienating that portion of them which they hold so dear. You can see it on this campus. There's so many people who you can just look at them and go, your identity that would contrast with the Bible is your most important part of yourself.
Wow, that's good.
The formation of that, who knows where it came from, right? Going back to the teacup and fire hose. But then to elaborate off of how to do that, you'd have to kind of switch your approach, going like, hey, you know, you've been given this great chance and choice of life, and this is not 100% rule book. This is for us to say we have this to help guide us, to help us understand how things work. And although some things we don't necessarily agree with what you're doing, you're kind of going against the metaphors, but you're living a happy life and you're not hurting anybody. And this is something that a lot of Christians would start to be like, I disagree, you know, the man's place, the woman's place, etc.
Right.
Which I think is more of a consequence of the time than the religion. I think you can create something very similar to like Buddhism, where Buddhism, I don't know if it's grown or shrunk at all, but it has this very idea of, we're not teaching you how to, you know, live your life. We're not teaching you this or that. We're teaching you what is this lifestyle of peace and understanding. And to be Buddhist is not to worship a god, but to be Buddhist is to live this peaceful life. It's a little contrasting, right? Not manipulate lifestyle, but also live this lifestyle.
Right.
But in order to find what they hold dear, right, and be able to separate that from religion and then almost market the religion towards the other aspect of their life, kind of side-skirting that idea, then you can get the religion back in and they can go, I'm not agnostic, I'm Christian, I just worship in a different way than you, right?
Nice.
I live my life of, you know, I am the money-making woman, I do this, and the husband is different, and we don't have kids, and that's the way they live, and they can still worship God, hold Jesus in their heart, as far as they might be able to believe. So the denomination.
Well, we're almost done. So before we go, I didn't want you to think I was dodging the question 30 minutes later. So you're straightforward, because I usually won't answer that. Nobody's asked me, if I can remember correctly. I might have offered up a little piece of it, and for obvious reasons, because, you know, well, this is his world. And I'm open to anybody, because that's the whole idea of new South Christians. But since you asked me, I guess the best way to identify myself would be what some people would call a spirit-filled Christian. In other words, I subscribe to the idea that the gifts that Jesus imparted onto the apostles, the ability to heal, you know, all the different gifts, they call them. And I believe that those don't just exist from that moment in history, but to any believer. So that I could pray for you, and that prayer would be just as the apostles were given the power of that kind of prayer. And so I, you know, for the most part, literally interpret the Bible. There's some areas where metaphors obviously help me. And I think the better educated you get, I'm not jettisoning my faith because I'm buying into this. It's just helping me understand another concept better. And I'm not losing my faith. And to be honest with you, in my walk of my life, I've had so many times when the Lord, who I believe it's God in heaven, has opened a door, closed a door, guided me in ways that are just hard to fathom, other than through the absolute faith, by grace, etc.
Yep.
And it's happened enough times that I know it's heard by a supreme being, and it's acknowledged by him.
Yep.
So that's what I believe.
Oh,
but
that's
I was
so
on a
interesting.
journey for a long period of time
To
but
finding
then
that.
finally came to
Yep.
that. Now, is it easy?
No.
No. There's times I'm mad, I'm ticked, I don't like what door closed and what door opened.
Yep.
But I've become more I affirm more that that's what I believe without a doubt.
Yep.
Now, as I've gotten older, because you see more of life, and I'll give you one example, then we'll part. When my father passed away, he was about a year and a half ago. We were in a room at the Hospice Live, and I'd never seen a person die before. And so we were there, and when he closed his eyes, you felt the breath go out of him, and I'm not exaggerating. I felt like what you would conjure as a spirit come by me, which I think was the essence of who he was. And all of a sudden, within 3 seconds, I'm looking at him like I'm looking at you. I could not tell who he was. And so I knew then this was a shell that had carried him around all these years. And that spirit that went by me was the essence of who he was. And I was never sad a moment after that, because I do believe in heaven. So I believed a second after he left us, he's standing somewhere in the proximity of what I believe is Jesus.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, why would I be sad? I've been left behind.
Yeah.
This person
Yep.
is free of all the aches and pains and the misery of our society.
Yep.
And so for me, that was a lot of solace in that. So experiencing that, strengthened my faith even more. So I'm at that point in life where those kinds of things are happening too many times for me to deny them. So
everything you say there is so interesting, and it's so connecting, like everything intertwines.
Yeah.
And to make the real big point before we, break off and everything like that, the experience.
Yes.
I could never comprehend what, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, 60, God, 3 or 4, I think. I don't even remember half the time.
Somewhere in that
Once
range.
I passed a certain point, I'm just like, I'm here.
I'm existing. I could never comprehend everything you've been through and more, because my perspective is my experience.
Right.
My experience is 18 years, which sounds like a lot of time,
Oh, yeah.
but we cut it up into bites. That's only maybe a fifth of your life.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's so small. And a lot of Gen Z is experiencing that. We're all experiencing our perspectives of life, but we don't have enough to understand where we want to go, where we're going to be, or what spiritual being might guide us or bestow upon us something we don't understand yet. And I think it's those really big moments that we have yet to experience, because I think a lot of Gen Z...
Well, you're going to experience death one day, and I'm going to tell you, it's not something to be looked forward to, but it is an enlightening experience.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, it changed me. And I know we're starting to run way over time, but one of the things, since you got me thinking now, the pandemic was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though I hated it educational-wise. I hate Zoom.
Yeah.
I hated all that. I was stuck in a farmhouse over in Greenbrier for almost 2 years. Well, but God once again met that need, but that's for a different day.
Yep.
Bottom line was, sitting over there alone for years, I started reading, praying, going on that spiritual journey. I got to tell you,
it's the catalyst.
The pandemic saved my life. I mean, worst thing ever happened to me almost, but best thing ever happened to me. So definitely, I think a lot of people feel that way. Well, man, we got to wrap it up. I got to tell you, you know what? I'll put this in a spiritual way. Every time that we have had somebody either cancel, we had to find somebody, we always find the best people. And I don't think that's by accident, because when you walked up, hey, what about you, Doctor Who? And you go, yes, I think I will. And you have been absolutely fantastic.
I appreciate it.
When this thing gets cut up into shorts and stuff, trust me, I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. So we always leave on a good note. Leave me on some positive, something you can share from the other side of the universe that you're Doctor Who.
Something I could share from the other side of the universe. Oh my goodness, something positive. I think we're living in the best time in human history, period. Okay. And if you don't believe me, tell me how life would be without air conditioning right now.
Oh, man, I love air conditioning.
Air conditioning's great.
Summertime in Tennessee, there is a hell. Yes.
Baby wipes, air conditioning, and heating. Those
Those
three
are the
things.
three?
Those are the three big
Okay.
things, and until you live without them, you don't understand how much you've really lost. We're living in the best time in human history. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Be grateful and thankful for the power you have at your fingertips and the heat you have in your hands.
Awesome. Well, anyway, thank you for being with us. This is a great episode. I definitely encourage you to share this with your friends. So have a happy day. God bless you.